So thank you very much for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today with you in beautiful Marseille. I want to take just a minute and thank our host for inviting me to speak today. And the title of this session is The Digital Identity in 5 Years. And if you bear with me this morning, I will get there in my presentation by talking about NIST work to support critical infrastructure. When we were talking about 4 or 5 months ago about this conference and the session and the keynote, we also have some of my other colleagues are here from NIST, and they will be talking about different aspects of our work in identity management. So I was asked to take maybe a slightly look above that and talk about some of our work with critical infrastructure in cybersecurity and identity management. Our programs are focused on national priorities such as smart grid, forensics, atomic clocks, and advanced nanomaterials. NIST overall mission is to promote U.S. innovation and competitiveness by advancing measurement science, standards, and technologies in ways that enhance economic security and improve the quality of life. In cybersecurity, of which I'm the NIST cybersecurity advisor for NIST, and so I work with our traditional role of standards and guideline development, as well as our new programs, including the National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, our work in the development of our new Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, as well as our work to help improve cybersecurity of critical infrastructure. All of this work really started in 1972 with the development of the data encryption standard, when we understood the commercial benefits of technology in this space, and it became clear for NIST, and that's really how we got started in cybersecurity. NIST is aggressively non-regulatory. So we do not issue our standards and guidelines, and we don't have that regulation like many of our other counterparts in the US government. But we accomplish our mission through collaborations with partnerships with customers and stakeholders in industry and academia, standards body, consortia, and international partners. Our primary mission in cybersecurity, as I mentioned earlier, is the development of standards and best practices for US government, but because they're widely available, they're often used by other organizations. And the development process, where we get input and insights from other organizations, from participating in venues like this, really strengthen our work. So, as I mentioned, our collaborative efforts have grown over the years, particularly with these new initiatives. And about 2.5 years ago, we received an assignment from a presidential executive order 13636, Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. So over a year ago, NIST issued the framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity in accordance with the executive order. The framework is voluntary in nature, just like the rest of NIST work. It was created through strong collaborations between industry, government, and academia, and it consists of standards, guidelines, and best practices to promote protection of critical infrastructure. As a matter of fact, all of the standards and best practices that we realize have a very global nature to them. So there is nothing in this framework that's really focused on U.S. or U.S. standards or U.S. government only. The framework really is a tool that evolves over time to help manage cybersecurity risk. The core of the framework is a set of voluntary activities based on 5 high-level functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. With these 5 high-level functions, organizations can help manage risk. Why does that matter? Why does that matter in the identity management space? Well, it becomes very important because I would imagine most of the people in this room are working on identity management tools and technologies, solutions, and policies. And sometimes as we're building these, we don't think as much about how they're going to be put in and used by different organizations, and why do our senior level managers, why will they care? Why will they invest in strong identity management, in strong cybersecurity capabilities? And our work in the development of the framework really was one of the voices that we heard. One of the comments that we received often was that while we work in cybersecurity, it doesn't seem like we get the attention of owners of organizations, of the C-suite is what we call them, so the CEOs and CFOs, etc., that they are not investing in cybersecurity. They are not investing in identity management. Well, it turns out that as we built this framework that really is about managing risk and reaching different outcomes when you manage risk, it gives them a way to be able to put that in perspective with other business risks that they are working and taking a look at on a daily and a weekly basis. So with those high-level functions of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, they could understand cybersecurity risks. They could understand identity management risks. And associated with those 5 high-level functions, we had categories and subcategories, and then example references that bring you back to the appropriate set of international standards and best practices. And so for categories, for example, identity management is an important category, and then subcategories were different aspects of identity management. With the framework, there are also profiles that represent outcomes based on business needs. So profiles are where you understand those core functions and what you are doing as an organization today, as well as identifying a target about where you want to be with those 5 high-level functions. A related activity provided organizations with the ability to provide context on how organizations view cybersecurity risk and the processes in place to manage those risks. So as part of our framework, which really ended up being about 14 pages long, the third concept relates to tiers. And tiers describe the degree to which an organization's cybersecurity risk management practices exhibit the characteristics defined in the framework. Tier 1 being partial all the way up to Tier 4, which would be very adaptive, meaning that you can see cybersecurity risks in the infrastructure, and before they come in and they become a problem within your organization, you can pivot and turn, or you can collect those as those threats are coming in, that you can manage them appropriately. So the framework provides an ability to manage risk from senior level all the way down, and to be able to have conversations with the bits and bytes folks. You can go from those high-level functions all the way to the details about a particular implementation. It allows organizations to describe cybersecurity and identity management risks, and be able to articulate those to other organizations. This allows for the concept of trust between organizations. So I can talk about my risk management posture in cybersecurity and identity management if I am a supplier to an organization, to a larger organization, or if I'm a larger organization, I can ask about that in my supply chain. Organizations today have been adopting the framework, have been taking a look at what their risk management posture looks like. These are both very large organizations. There are very small organizations, and we actually have some use cases available that companies have provided to us, and we're making them publicly available so that people can see how to use the framework. It has changed the conversation across the United States. So we are talking that we are seeing that organizations in healthcare, in finance, in utilities, in telecommunications, at board meetings, at CEO board meetings, are asking about cybersecurity, understanding how what their organization's posture looks like. It takes it from just a technical, we need to keep adding capabilities into our system, to one where you can manage risk. We've also received a lot of feedback on places where we need more standards or better standards. One of the areas that comes to mind, two of the areas that come to mind, one is in the concept of recovery. There are not a lot of capabilities, whether you're talking about identity management or cybersecurity, in the recovery space. What happens if your entire system fails? How are you going to bring that back? As we worked with critical infrastructure, and we thought about ICT, or as we think of it at NIST, cyber physical systems, in the identity management space, we recognized that we don't have the techniques and capabilities for a strong identity management posture of all of the new kinds of devices that are coming on board today and in the future. So that question of identity management, not just is this Donna Dodson, but the sensors that are out there for traffic control, or sensors that are out there in the smart grid, how are we identifying that particular device? So we've seen a lot of opportunities to advance both cybersecurity and identity management through the development of the framework, being able to take a look at the high-level spectrum of what kinds of risks are you trying to manage, and then working your way into those standards and best practices. The framework, because it evolves over time, there will be new standards and best practices that are needed, particularly in the ICT space. So my NIST colleagues who work with the National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, they actually work for me, and we have been looking at NSTIC and some of the evolution that we need to think about, particularly in the cyber physical system space, and particularly around device authentication and device identity management. I think that's a place that's going to receive a lot of emphasis in the next 5 years, as well as different personas that are associated, that associate that device identity with my identity, whether I'm Donna Dodson NIST or Donna Dodson homeowner, becomes very important. That context of my identity and how that authentication and access control kinds of capabilities are done, and how that meshes back with different ICT kinds of systems. So when I look at the world today, you know, I go to a lot of cybersecurity and identity management conferences, and there's still a lot of doom and gloom out there, that all kinds of bad things are happening. But there's so many innovations that are occurring across the digital infrastructure and that are touching all aspects of our lives. It is a very exciting time for all of us. We still have an awful lot of work to do in the identity management space and in the cybersecurity space as we think about cyber physical systems and smart cities and bringing all of these pieces together. But the innovations that improve the quality of our life, whether it's a much smarter infusion pump in the medical world, but again, you want to be able to understand which infusion pump I was using at a particular time, and the identity management challenges there are fairly great. We actually have a project that we're doing at our National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence where we're taking standards and best practices and building them out into some example kinds of capabilities, example blueprints that have that holistic architecture. And very often in the identity management space, we see maybe I have strong authentication, but my access control capabilities are not as great as they should be because it's still cumbersome and hard to use. The other thing that we saw in the development of the framework, and that I see all the time in the work that we are doing, has to do with usability. And I strongly believe that we are not going to maximize our capabilities in cybersecurity and in identity management if we leave out the usability aspect of things. When I used to do real work, I worked a lot in public key infrastructure technology. And every time I see something that comes up on the screen that says, certificate not valid, what would you like to do? And I think about my mother getting that message. What is she going to say? I want to keep going, thank you. I don't know what this means, so I'll just click through it. So from a usability perspective in identity management, we have to quit promoting bad behavior, making it easier to do the right thing, harder to do the wrong thing, and easier to back up if you do the wrong thing. So I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of emphasis on device kinds of authentication, which requires us to have different kinds of cryptographic underpinning and a different kind of key management solution. I think we're going to see more and more opportunities to improve usability and bring together holistic identity management solutions that bring the users and the device much more closely together. So we have a lot of challenges in front of us, but a lot of opportunities as well. Thank you.